right. Okay. So this is, kind of an overview of everyone who's here, and I'll give everyone a chance to kind of introduce themselves and say hello. I think mostly everybody on this screen might be here. Adriana, do you want to start?
Sure, you might know me by name and we might have talked on the phone before, or you've seen me in another session, but I'm Adriana Kelly and I'm one of your advisors.
So I'm Renee Finnemore, been chatting here already, but I'm also one of your advisors here, and I'm glad everyone can be here today.
Good afternoon. I am Mrs. Ferretti, and I am the field coordinator and also an instructor for our online MSW track students.
I think you said, unfortunately, Miss Von Berglund can't be here with us today, correct? But it looks like
Yes.
maybe Miss Hall is.
Yep. Hi, I'm Shelley Hall. I'm one of the field faculty and an instructor in field.
Glenn Simey, are you here somewhere? Maybe not. Glenn Simey is an online MSW student, and he represents our program at the School of Social Work faculty meetings. So he hopefully will be joining us before the end of the session, and he's going to share a little bit about what to expect. So let's see here. So field placement, right? Very exciting time and hard to believe that we're already thinking about that when you're just in your second semester here in the program. But, we really want to get you to start thinking about what you can expect and what what your life going to look like as you're moving forward. So I know you may have a lot of specific questions about field placement, and I expect that a lot of that's going to be answered in the field placement orientation web course that you're going to be doing in the coming weeks. The purpose of today's session is really to help you prepare for that web course. So you'll learn some, but not all of the things that you need to know about field placement. We just want to make sure you have the most important information right now, and so that as you begin. So we'll be focusing on those details today to make sure that you kind of have a smooth kickoff to your process. So, we're going to spend some time with Miss Freddie right now. She's going to kind of get that started and focusing on field and the basic things you need to know about field placement. And then Adriana and I will talk to you about what happens with field placement in terms of having a successful placement or a failed placement, and then things to think about as you're going forward. If you need to take a break, what do you need to know about licensure and what to expect, those sorts of things. So, all right, Miss Ferretti, it's all yours.
Okay. Hello again, everyone. So I just wanted to do an overview of the online MSW field team. So there are multiple people that are going to be involved in your field journey throughout the course of your field journey. It can be kind of difficult sometimes to keep track of all the names of everybody and things like that. So not expected to remember, but I just thought I'd do a brief overview. So as I mentioned, I'm the field coordinator for our online MSW track. I also teach and I also place. So I could be involved in your life in multiple ways. And then we have our full-time field faculty and also instructors, who is Miss Von Berglund and then Miss Hall. And they place students. They also teach students and make decisions, on our field team as far as policies and procedures and things like that. We have the field seminar instructors. Those are the faculty who teach your field seminar courses. So again, that would be me, it could be Miss Hall, it could be Miss Von Berglund. We're the full-time field faculty. We have a few part-time field faculty who you may come across that teach your field seminar course. So those are your field seminar instructors. A field agency instructor, which is also could be known as your supervisor, or in some agencies they call them a preceptor. Your field agency instructor is the social worker at the agency who is going to provide you with the supervision. So that person is the one that will meet with you for supervision, and they're also the person that's going to evaluate you at the end of each semester. And then you may or may not have an agency task supervisor. Some agencies have that set up and some don't. An agency task supervisor is kind of a day-to-day, it could be a day-to-day person that's overseeing your work or giving you tasks or collaborating with you on projects. And that might be the case, for example, if the social worker is not available every time that you're there. So many social workers have many different sites that they oversee. For example, in a school, they might be responsible for 3 different schools. And so while you're assigned to one school doing your placement, there may be somebody assigned as your agency task supervisor for when the social worker is not present. So you're coming into your generalist field in fall, and we're really looking forward to being on the field journey with you. So you be applying for field in just the coming weeks to be placed for fall. So your generalist placement is entry-level social work, right? So some places and some agencies call it your foundation year. Same thing, generalist year, foundation year. The learning of your tasks is going to go along with what you're learning in your courses, right? So you're going to engage in entry-level practice. The most common function of a generalist student is case management activities. You might be assessing needs or resources in the community. You could be doing a lot of community outreach, a lot of client outreach, and then developing and improving resources such as policy manuals or resource manuals, websites, organizing community resource fairs at some of your agencies, home visits, visiting clients in their home. And so some examples, just a few examples of where we place students when they're in their generalist year would be emergency shelters like domestic violence or homeless shelters, emergency children's shelters for foster care youth, crisis hotlines, grief and loss programs, and then emergency assistance programs like food, housing, clothing, and then community resource and referral agencies. And then also sometimes schools will accept a generalist level intern as well. So those are some of the examples. Okay, so in the first week of March, you're going to receive an invitation through your Knight's email account, and that's going to come directly from Web Courses. And that email is going to be asking you to join the mandatory non-credit web course. So that's going to be the online MSW mandatory field placement process for fall of 2021, which is when you're going to be entering into field. But we need many months before that, right, to start the process, start the placement process and get things situated. So the first week of March, that will come out, and you'll want to keep your eye on your Knight's email for that, and then accept the invitation and jump into the non-credit course to be able to complete the assignments in there. And so all throughout field, I know Ms. Kelly and Ms. Finnemore stressed the importance of checking your Knight's email, but you may be usually used to hearing from them, but now you're going to want to keep an eye out specifically for emails from Ms. Hall, from Ms. Von Berglund, from me. When it gets closer to getting you matched with an agency, you'll want to be keeping your eye out for an email from agencies, things like that. So the non-credit web course, this is what the home page of the course looks like. And it has a lot of information, and we continue to add to this course as students kind of come up with more questions and things that need to be clarified. So it's a pretty detailed and pretty thorough. So you'll want to really take a look at everything in there. And again, that will come out, the invitation for that course will come out the first week of March. And then the second week of March, the first 2 assignments are going to be due. So the type of assignments you're going to have in this course are going to be, reading of expectations, policies, frequently asked questions, and you're going to be asked to read those things and then confirm in the assignment that you've read and understood all of that information. The third assignment in there will be due the week of the 15th of March, and that's the placement process information form. So what that is it's a pretty simple form that you're going to just put your basic information in, your name, where you live, what area you live in, and then if you have any extra things that you need us to know. An example would be maybe you are having a baby in the middle of your field placement, a couple months into your field placement, and maybe you need us to know that, so we can be keeping that in mind as we're trying to find you an agency. Another example would be if you are concerned about that you have limited availability, you might want to put that within that form. So that's a pretty basic form, and then you're going to have a chance the week after that to really elaborate on some of your preferences, the preference population that you might want to work with, or a little bit more about yourself. For example, if you have any background issues or transportation issues, you'll have a chance to kind of elaborate on all of that. So that first assignment, placement process info, is just the basics, and that's what helps us to delegate who you're going to be assigned to for placement. So again, the placement process is facilitated by myself, Ms. Hall, and Ms. Von Berglund. So we'll be the first set of people that will be a part of your placement journey. And that first assignment is what helps us to delegate who you're going to be assigned to between the three of us. And that will then become your assigned faculty throughout your whole placement process. There's a few more assignments in there. No research papers, no big tests, no big quizzes, but just information that you really need to know so that you can be prepared for what's ahead and kind of what that's going to look like and how to fit it into your life. So after you submit the field application, about 5 to 6 weeks after that, so the actual field application will be due the last week of March. So about 5 or 6 weeks after that, that is when you will hear from either myself, Ms. Hall, or Ms. Von Berglund saying, I'm your assigned faculty for placement process, right? And let's start collaborating, let's start the process and really start to move forward with assigning you an agency. So you'll want to keep an eye out for that. You'll hand in your field placement application, and then it's going to kind of be a little bit of awkward silence for a couple of weeks, right? So in the meantime, you can do your resume, you can read through the rest of the course information on this course. You don't have to stop at the due date. You can keep going right on through to this course. There's a field orientation in there. There's some information about how to kind of manage field anxiety, things like that. So you can go right on through while you're waiting for us to get things, the logistics of things situated. Once you hear from one of us, then you'll want to respond to the email. There'll be instructions in there that say, please respond to say that you've gotten this email and you're ready to keep it moving, right? And start the collaboration process. So that's a little bit about that. Again, lots of information in there, but you might still have questions after you read all the information, and that's fine too. So feel free to, reach out as you need clarity. Okay, so for the placement requirements, really important to remember that we don't have control over when agencies will want you to be there, right, for placement. So what we do know, though, is that agencies do not allow students to only be on site during nights and weekends only. And so you'll really want to work to be available to attend placement during normal business hours, right? So that's typically going to be, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. That's going to really want to be a priority of yours, right? Because although we know as faculty that you have multiple things to juggle, you have multiple responsibilities, right? We do not have control, right, over if the agency says, well, yeah, we're open all weekend, right? We're a 24-hour crisis shelter, but there's no social worker here on the weekend, so we cannot have an intern here, things like that. But so you don't want to create any barriers, right? So that tends to sometimes be a barrier to a successful placement, is the scheduling of things. So you'll just want to really start thinking about that, talking with your job, and thinking about your other responsibilities, just so you can kind of open up your schedule, right? So if it's 10 hours a week, you'll want to be able to be available 2 of those days, for about 5 hours for 2 of those days. We don't have agencies, unfortunately, that allow students to do all 10 hours in one day, right? Very typically, they're going to want you there, at least 2 of the days a week, for about 4 or 5 hours each day. And then also another thing that can come up as a barrier is, if you have any criminal or drug history or driving record issues. And again, that's not on our behalf, but if the agency, depending on the level of background screening that they do, they may not be able to accept you. Their policies may be as such. So it's really important on the placement process info form, and then again in your field placement application, just be real clear and real transparent with us about that. That's confidential. It stays with your field faculty, but it's important for us to know, because if we know up front, we can try the best we can to kind of find an agency that maybe doesn't do a very high level background check, like maybe a level 2, and things like that. So you'll want to just be real clear and transparent with us about that, so that we can navigate through as best as possible. Submitting your field application and your documents on time. So the field application is the field app. If there's a resume that you'll have to submit, that's the resume that we're going to send out to agencies. So you'll want that to be updated and organized and well presented. And then a small personal narrative. So you'll want to make sure you're keeping an eye on the deadlines for the course and submitting things on time. If not, your placement process, whenever there's a delay in you communicating or handing things in, your placement process kind of stops at that point, right? And we can't move forward. And every delay that there is could cause a delay in you getting placed. Same thing with the interview with assigned agencies. So we'll go ahead and find you an agency that you'll be assigned to interview with. And we'll match you with that agency, and that's your assigned interview, right? And so when we reach out to you and we say, here's the agency you're assigned to interview with, you have 48 business hours to reach out to that agency, not to make the interview. Sometimes people get very anxious. Oh my gosh, I have 48 hours to interview. No, it's just 48 hours to reach out to them by email or by phone and say, hello, this is who I am. They're going to already know. The agency is going to already be expecting you because we've already made that connection. So I was referred to you by my field faculty, Ms. Hall or Ms. Von Berglund, and I would like to coordinate an interview. Again, if there's a delay in that can be detrimental to your placement process because they're not required to hold your interview spot. After that, they can just move on and fill it with another student, and then we'll be back to square one. And then again, completing the field placement process, orientation web course, assignments that are in there. Okay. So employment-based field placement. So things have changed slightly due to the CSWE recognizing that COVID has had a very great impact, not a good impact, a big impact on field placements and agencies and the way they operate. And so because of that, they are allowing certain situations where a student can use their actual job that they're doing towards their field placement requirements. There are a number of stipulations and a number of qualifying factors. So if you feel like that's something that might be able to be applicable to you, you'll indicate that on the placement process info form. And then when you meet with your assigned field faculty, you'll discuss that. And the field faculty will kind of be able to assess and figure out if you meet the criteria. So a good example of that is sometimes we have students who are case managers at a child welfare agency. And sometimes if we get a good handle on what they're doing for their job and their agency is on board with it, we've been able to make that work. And so that's just a thing that is CSWE is being flexible about right now due to COVID, but not everybody, it's not applicable to everybody. So it's just something that needs to be discussed and processed so that we can see. The other form of employment-based field placement is where you're working at an agency and there's a different unit. So if you're working at a hospital, let's say, and you work in the NICU, but there's an opportunity to do placement hours in the emergency room, let's say. So that would be same agency, different unit, and it would need to be a different supervisor. So you have to have a different supervisor than the person who you report to for work. The supervisor, your agency field instructor, would need to have an MSW of 2 or more years, and you would be doing the placement hours outside of your 40-hour work week. So again, so your educational goals have to be the primary focus of the position, right? So we have to make sure that what you're doing for placement matches up with what the educational goals are for that year. So you can't be doing a clinical placement if you're a generalist student, right? For that route, like I said, the employment supervisor has to be separate from the agency field instructor role. And then you'll get your 1 hour of supervision per week from the agency field instructor, and that person will be 2 years post MSW. So the employment-based situation can be it can get a little tricky because there are a lot of qualifying factors that we wouldn't expect you to have to navigate through on your own. So when you are assigned a field faculty for placement process, you'll kind of delve into that and you'll work together with the faculty to see if that's something that can be worked out. And of course, sometimes it works out on our end, you meet the stipulations, but the agency is not on board with it, right? And so that can be a letdown. So there's multiple factors, right? But definitely worth looking into if it's something that you feel like might be a good fit.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Ferretti. Adriana, do you want to lead us into talking about how we can ensure a successful placement?
Sure. I'm going to reiterate a lot of what Ms. Ferretti has already said. But basically, these are some things that you can do to ensure that you are not preventing your field placement from moving forward. So one of the biggest things is trying to have a flexible schedule. One of the important things to do, I think, is have a conversation with your family, your support system. Let them know what you are about to embark upon. They know that you're in grad school, but they might need to pitch in and make dinner a few nights a week, or maybe you need a parent to pick up your kids, something like that. So you want to be sure that you are available during the day, during the week. Like Ms. Ferretti said, you're not going to do all your hours in one day. You're likely going to need to be available 2 days a week. And in your clinical year, you're going to have to look at about 3 days a week, possibly. So talk to your job. Make sure that you have a plan moving forward. If right now you're thinking, oh, I work full time, I'm not going to be able to do anything, start looking at your leave time. Some students use their paid time off to be at their internship during the week between 8 and 5. So try to see what you can do about being flexible in your schedule, because that's going to make the biggest difference in what opportunity is available for you. And we would hate to have you have to sit out because you're not able to get a placement due to your inflexibility. Reliable transportation. You're going to expect to travel up to an hour, sometimes a little bit more. Some of you live in cities, some of you live in rural areas. So it's very important to make sure that you know what public transportation options exist for you, schedules of buses and trains, things like that, or that you have a reliable vehicle. Maybe your car is great at short-term driving, but you just want to make sure that if you have to drive for an hour, you're going to be able to get there to your placement safely and on time. So something to consider looking ahead. One thing that we find is that students might come into the program with a dream placement. So you know that you really want to work with families, and you're sure that you don't want to work with kids. But your placement's really dependent on a lot of things, and it's out of our hands in a lot of ways. So dependent on your location, the more populations and settings that you're open to, the more opportunities we're going to be able to find for you. So the other thing is that, the dream placement that you thought you really wanted might not actually work out to be that way. And you'll find a new population that really, sparks joy and makes you rethink the way that you were moving forward. So you might not have thought of hospice as something that would be easy to do, or would be something that you would be able to do, but you find that comforting presence that you have is something that warms your heart, and you know that you're going to be fulfilled doing that. So we just ask you to really be open-minded when you think about placement options. You're going to get an email from your field team member, and you're going to have to make an interview you have to make your contact with your placement for an interview within 48 hours. And if you see the email and you think, oh, that's not somewhere I want to go, make the interview. Make the interview. You'll be missing out on a lot if you put off an opportunity just because you think you know what it'll be like. So we really encourage you to be open to whatever's out there. And your email, monitor your email. So important during this time, because Renee and I will constantly email you about registration and events and things like that. But because of the short window you have to contact your placement possibility, you really need to be sure that you're checking that night's email every day. There's, you can look up on the website, there's ways to add it to your phone. So you want to check it just as easily as you check your Gmail or something else. Be sure to check your email. Another thing is communicate with your field faculty. So it's important to always maintain contact, because you may have something going on, like you might be having a baby, or you might be thinking of relocating. And that's something that comes up often, and we are always encouraging you to tell your field faculty what's going on. A lot of times students will come to the advisors to talk about places where, oh, I think there's more opportunities in Jacksonville, Florida, as opposed to the place that I am, so I'm thinking of moving there. No, hang on, don't just move to Jacksonville because you think that. Definitely have a conversation with your field team member. When you fill out your application, you're going to tell us where you're located, and that's where we'll be looking for the placement. So if you suddenly decide that you want to live elsewhere, and your application says that you were in Tallahassee and you want to be in Jacksonville now, we're not going to know of that change. So the team needs to know what's going on with you. If you know that a place like hospice or an agency that might be affiliated with religion or something, if you have any qualms about that, if you have anything that would make you very uncomfortable, it's great to just talk to them about that. I'm not saying that you're not going to encounter challenges in a field placement, but just keep in touch with them. They want to know what you think, and they have so much experience. They're going to be able to help you through all that. And finally, something to do, you want to be professional in all your interactions, from your interview process through your field placement. We don't want you to have a poor experience because you weren't able to get there on time, because you weren't dressed appropriately. So Be professional. This is a professional program. You act professionally in your classes. We ask that you maintain those professional behaviors at your placement as well. And any interactions that you have are reflection of you and also your program. So we want to make sure that everybody is a top-notch UCF student, and anything we can do to help you, we will. But these are some of the things that you can do to ensure that you have a successful placement.
Awesome. Thank you, Adriana. Okay, so let's think a little bit about failed placement. No one wants to have this happen to them, and we certainly don't want it to happen for you either. But situations, some things can arise. And so if that does happen, you will be required to sit out from anywhere from 1 to 3 semesters in order to re-enter the field placement process. So if you think about, we get started pretty early. So if something happens where you have a failed placement, you might actually miss the deadline for the next cycle of field placement application. So that can lead to you having to sit out not just 1 semester, but 2. And these are things, we've kind of touched on them, but it's really about, not communicating with your assigned field faculty or not having flexibility in your schedule, setting up an employment-based field placement, but then leaving your job. Relocating, as Adriana mentioned, moving once you've started the placement process, or just declining a placement that is arranged or refusing to interview. These things, they pause your placement process, and then you'll need to meet with your field faculty to discuss the situation and then make a plan for moving forward. And in 99.99% of those situations, it also requires a conversation with me to revise your plan of study because you'll be taking some sort of break. It's pretty rare that these types of situations can be resolved quickly enough in order for you to move forward and be placed in the same semester. So that's important to keep in mind as you're kind of going along. Adriana, this is Adriana's area of expertise, so I'm going to let her take the wheel here.
This is not usually something that students are too concerned about in their first couple semesters, but it's something that can have a big impact on you moving forward. So know your state's licensure rules. This program meets the licensure requirements for the state of Florida. We can guarantee that. I can't officially guarantee that we meet the licensure requirements in any other state. For example, we don't admit students from Nebraska because we know we don't meet their qualifications. Every other state, we're pretty sure, but it's on you to check and be sure, because you might have another class that you need to take that we don't offer. For example, human sexuality is a course that some states require, and we might offer it as an elective, but it's not part of our core curriculum. So you might have graduated from the program and then discover, oh, I needed to take a human sexuality course. So usually it's something that you can take even after you've graduated with us, but it's something to be mindful of as you move through the program and you're picking electives or completing your field placement. One of the ways you can check is to click on a link. I'm going to put it in the chat too. We'll send you this PowerPoint also, but your state social work license board, this is going to give you the ability to find what are the requirements for your state. And most of them are pretty clear about what they require. And a lot of times it just says an MSW from a CSWE accredited university as the education requirement. But in addition to that, you're going to have qualified supervisor, or sorry, hours that have been supervised by a qualified supervisor. You might have to take a laws and rules or ethics course, a child abuse course. There's lots of different requirements depending on your state, but education requirements we typically hit because we are a CSWE requirement or accredited program. If you do have any questions, you can reach out to me and I can help you navigate the system and sort of find what you're looking for if you're unable to do so. I can't officially confirm anything. That's going to be a requirement for you to contact your state directly, but I'm happy to help you navigate the process and very familiar with what happens in Florida. So feel free to ask me any questions about that as well. And when you are getting ready to graduate, I'll give you some additional information on how to get some verification forms from us for your state.
Awesome. Thank you, Adriana. So, oh, I think here we go. Okay, so thinking about taking a break. So maybe you're taking a break because you had your placement was unsuccessful. But you might also be thinking, I need to take a break because some of those issues that we talked about are things that are happening for me. I know I'm going to be moving during the process or during field place when I would be in field placement. Maybe you have some health concerns or like we mentioned, having a baby. For some people, there's some financial concerns because they've got to change their job or cut back their hours and figure out how they're going to make room for field placement hours. Or just, any, other issues that you think might create a barrier for your successful completion of field placement. These are things that we can talk about. So if you decide up front that you believe you are going to take a break and not apply for field, it's a good idea to just let me or Ms. Ferretti know so that we can be monitoring that in the field placement orientation web course. But you may decide after meeting with your assigned field faculty that you're going to take a break. And then in that case, you would come to me and we would revise your plan of study and arrange for when you're going to take a break and when you will return to the program. So just know that sometimes it is necessary just to sort of get your own life in order the way you want it to be in order to be successful. And in those cases, we do accommodate students' requests to take a break. So just know that we'll work with you and support you best we can. So, and I know Glenn Simey's here. I'm going to introduce him in a second. But just in terms of thinking about what to expect. So you're moving into field, you've gotten your placement, you've gotten through the process, and you've got you know where you're going and where your agency is. So what it's going to look like during those semesters, you're still going to have those 2 7-week classes that run one at a time, but you'll also be adding 2 field education courses. Remember, Ms. Ferretti mentioned you'll have a seminar instructor who will be teaching those courses. So you'll have a course that's specifically related to the hours that you are earning working at your field placement, and then a seminar class where you're really focusing on integrating what you're learning in your courses with what you're doing in your field placement. So you'll have those 2 courses. They run the entire semester. So you'll see you've already gotten an email from Adriana about what to register for, right? That happens every semester. So you'll see that for the fall, you'll have 4 courses to add to your schedule for the fall. So just kind of keep an eye on that and just know that what's that going to look like? You're going to have 4 extra credits you're working on throughout this semester, plus 10 hours a week at your placement. So be thinking about how good are my organization and time management skills. If you feel like these are areas that you might struggle with, now's a great time to reach out to your success coaches. They have wonderful resources that can really be helpful and have you get started with that. So, and as Adriana mentioned, getting that support network going with your family and friends and other people. So, and I think Glenn Simey has joined our meeting. So this would be a great time for Glenn if you want to hop in and add to share with students what they can expect in field. That would be great.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone, and welcome to what I think is the greatest school in the state of Florida and beyond. I'm very honored to say that I'm also, I was elected a student representative. I'm going into my 3rd year. I'm at the tail end of year 2. And I can tell you that it has been one of the best experiences that I've had learning how to juggle all of my commitments along with school and the work that I do outside of that and field. It seemed, in my head, I was like, how am I ever going to be able to do this? And, I listened to people like Renee, Adriana, Shelley, Ms. Ferretti, I have limited interaction with, but I know that she's of that same team and mindset. I can't wait to get to know her a little bit better. I was able to use everything that they said and the little things that, I got on the website and emails about time management and self-care. And I really focused on that. and I put together a plan that is really working well. And I got to tell you, as overwhelmed as I felt in the beginning, and maybe some of you are feeling that now, trying to think ahead and how am I going to do this? I can tell you it is absolutely possible. I'm here also for you all. If I can share my experience, strength, and hope, I'd like to make myself available to you. If you just need maybe some advice on this time management thing and some of the ways that I've done that, which I'll kind of touch on. You know, for me, it's all about balance. I know that's the ever so elusive balance that I used to notice as I was swinging past it. But I have created a plan, and it's so important. Like they've all, if they haven't shared yet, I'm sure you'll hear about it. Self-care, you know, for me, that's I'm big on mindfulness. I have a little meditation app that sometimes I have to just shut down, take a 5-minute reset, bring myself back into today, and keep it here. Chop wood, carry water is an old saying that somebody gave me, and everything, it all comes together. You know, right now I'm holding it down with a full-time job. I work in the substance abuse and mental health field. I have a full caseload of clients. I have my internship that I'm doing. I have outside responsibilities, a family, grandkids, dogs, a home, and chores, and it all works out. So what I'll do is, I don't know if it was my information was posted, but somehow I'd like to make myself available with my email address. I'm even willing to give out my phone number for those of you that might need any support or information that I can usually, the best resources for that are Renee, Adriana, Ms. Hall, and Ms. Ferretti. But anything that I can do to help, I'm willing to, you know, chop wood and carry water. Other than that, I can tell you that my internship is going great. You know, it probably took me a good month before I was settled in and had my schedule down. But what was very important for me was literally taking one of my schedules that I make to see my clients and mapping out my day and making sure to put that self-care time in there. You know, time for my schoolwork, time for reading, because, you know, I'm one of those people that when they give you readings, I've got to do that. You know, and it all does fit in there. So anything is possible. And I hope that you are all as excited and grateful as I was to be accepted to UCF. And I really feel like we are in the best school that Florida has to offer. That's just my opinion. I don't know. I don't know. Anything else? Does anybody have any questions, or is there anything that I can add to that?
We are going to save some time for questions at the end, I think. But
Okay.
Thank you so much, Glenn. That's great. We just want to run through the next few things. Just be on the lookout for your email from Web Courses and from the team, the field team. Do you want to save that until the very end after questions, Renee? I didn't know.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Sure.
everybody.
Glenn, if you wanna type your email address and phone number in the chat for everyone that's here now, and then I'll be sure to add it to the PowerPoint before we email it out to the cohort, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so this is the time for Q&A. So let's see here. Let's maybe start with the questions that are in the chat, and then, you know, people can just jump in with any questions they have. I'm going to stop screen sharing for a minute, though. Okay. Whew, there we go.
Don't be shy. You can type them if you want to, if you don't want to
Sure.
talk.
This is Sarah.
Sarah.
About how many interviews, and I'm sure it's different for every person, but like how many interviews do people go through with potential placement?
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for your question. The goal is one interview, right? So that's the goal. If for some reason you are not accepted on that interview, then we would need to have a conversation about why you were not accepted on the interview. So that would kind of determine how we move forward. I'll just give an example. If I think Renee or Adriana used this example, but if you were not accepted because you showed up and you were not dressed professionally and you were annoyed to be there and you were very transparent about saying, I don't even want to do this internship, and you were not accepted for that reason, we would definitely need to have like a coaching conversation and kind of a little bit of interview prep and things like that. And then if another opportunity were to be found for you to interview, then you could possibly have an opportunity to be interviewed. But if you went on the interview and they had a misunderstanding, like maybe they said, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were a clinical student, even though we do let them know, maybe they had oh, I thought you were a clinical student and you're a generalist student. I'm so sorry, I don't have anything for a generalist student this semester. That's different, right? Then we kind of kick it into high gear and we say, okay, that is not going to be documented as as that they declined the student. That's just going to be documented as like a misunderstanding, and we're going to kick it into high gear and go ahead and try to find you another agency to interview with. So the interviews, I'll be honest, the interviews, when the agency says to us, yes, we have an intern spot, we'll interview your student. The expectation, they're expecting that they're going to meet you and that they're going to find you a good fit and you're going to move forward because they know that we've already done some gatekeeping on our end, right? So it's usually not a super competitive, strict interview where you're maybe interviewing against many other students. Sometimes it's like that, more often in the clinical year. But if they're saying they'll interview you, then that usually means they have a spot available and that they're expecting, to just have that meeting with you. So to answer your question, I would count on one interview and it's successful and you have your placement.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Ferretti, can you speak a little bit about someone's asked a similar question, but I've talked to students in the past who have gone on an interview, but their availability does not match that of the agency. So like they're available during the day, during the week, but the days that they're available do not match what the agency is needing.
Yeah.
How would that be handled?
So, I think that, again, we would kind of have a conversation and then try to find another interview opportunity, right? And hope that interview, because when we are matching with agencies and trying to find an opportunity, we're not telling them, well, this student is only available on Mondays and Wednesdays, right? You're going to have that conversation when you're on the interview. And so that's a good point, though. Say you go and you're like, I'm available all day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And the agency's like, well, we only need you on Tuesday and Thursday. That can definitely happen. Usually they're upfront with us about that, the agency, like, hey, yeah, I'll interview your student, but they have to be here on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That would be the ideal situation. And then we wouldn't even bother sending you on the interview. But in the event that does happen, then we would work to the best of our ability to find another interview opportunity. I would say that in terms of the days of the week, I don't find that there's many agencies. I would say it's more rare that an agency would say you have to be there on these particular days. The bigger thing that comes into play is the times, not really like the specific days. So I would say that that's less likely than the hours being.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's helpful. So one of our students is saying she's gonna need daycare for her daughter and has to register her soon for fall semester. So she's gonna need to arrange for daycare for her daughter before we're gonna know where her placement is. So she's wondering, what's her best route in terms of picking her 2 days? Is it okay as long as it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, or?
Yeah, I would say that, yes, I would say that as long as there are 2 days during the week that are freed up, it's very highly likely that an agency is going to be able to work within that, within those days. You know what I mean? So I would say if you're in that type of situation with daycare, you pick the days, and then you let the agency know. It's actually really good because you can go on the interview saying, I have childcare on these days, and that way they don't have to kind of be figuring that out right then and there. They'll kind of know up front that, okay, these are the days that you're available. And so I think that's a good plan. If childcare needs to be registered for, you go ahead and register for it. And then that way you'll be able to discuss that right there on the interview.
Okay, great, thank you. Can you tell us again, I think you might have covered this, but I can't remember. When will a student know who their specific field faculty is for placement process?
Okay, so the field application, I haven't done the math on the dates, but the field application is due the week of the 29th of March. So it's due during that week. And then 5 to 6 weeks after that date is when you should be hearing from either myself, Ms. Hall, or Ms. Von Berglund. So if I have the calendar, let's see.
Around mid-May.
Okay, yes.
Is that about right?
Is that right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So mid-May, very exciting. Okay, so next question. When can we plan to start our field experience? So when will we be at our agency? Will that happen like the first week classes start, or is it something that we arrange with our agency?
Yes, so ideally you're gonna plan to start that first week that field starts, the first week of the fall semester. Sometimes agencies have trainings beforehand that you are allowed to attend, and you can count up to 16 hours before the semester starts towards your field hour requirement. So they may have a training, within a week or two. Some agencies have trainings like 3 weeks before the semester starts, and so you might go for the training, but then not actually start. But ideally, you would be wanting to plan to start that first week of fall semester unless there is a training or something extra that you need to do for that specific agency. Some students are in situations with agencies where maybe they can't get them started for a few weeks after the semester starts. And that's okay too, because as long as you have a solidified, finalized placement, as long as we know, okay, this student has a placement, they were accepted, everything's squared away, but they can't get them started until 2 weeks after the semester starts, that's okay too, as long as we know the plan. But I would plan for starting, yes, that first week of the fall semester.
Related to, so we've talked about moving, right? If you're moving, during the process, then, you're not eligible for placement. But if a student knows now that they're going to be moving, say, later in the summer, could they put that information on their placement process form and application? And then what would happen if, like, you say they're not going to be in that location until the start of the fall semester, but then interviews are being arranged during the process time prior to that? Like, what would you recommend?
So what I would recommend is the way that our policies and procedures are set up is when you apply for field, the address that you put is the address where we're going to be looking for a placement for you. So that's when your process starts, right? And so if you are applying the last week of March, right, you're going to want to put the address that you're going to be in. If you don't know the exact address, that's fine. But like, what is the vicinity? What is the town, right? Because when we get that and you're assigned a field faculty, then the search process starts to try to find you an opportunity in that location. After that time, then you put one location and then you hand in your field application, and we're in the process of finding a placement, and then you move. Unfortunately, then you have to sit out because there's not enough time to start from square one. So in the example, in the question that you were asking, Renee, like the student would put where they're going to be living, even though they're not physically in that location yet, so that we can start to locate a placement in the area they're going to be in. If the interview happens before they move, the hope would be is maybe they can do a Zoom interview, maybe they can do a phone interview, possibly they can maybe get out there for the interview, you know? And most of the time, an agency is going to be, you know, flexible about, oh, okay, well, I'm not actually physically in that area yet, but can we set up the interview on Zoom? Can we set up the interview on a phone call? And so if the agency is not open to that, you know what I mean, then unfortunately that would have to go down as like a declined opportunity, because like every day time is ticking, right? And so there's just so many variable factors. But I find that in those situations, when students are in those situations, as long as they're willing to do what they can to make the interview, it's not like, you know, somebody's going to say to you, well, you have to be here tomorrow. Like you have control over, oh, okay, I can't come on an interview this week, but I can come in 3 weeks, or, you know, just be open about it, that you're not physically in that location. Is that answer? Okay.
Yeah, I think I hope that answers somewhat, because we do have one student that's in that situation that I'm aware of, and I was thinking that we might have some others that maybe they know they're moving, but they're going to be moving during the summer to be in their location for the fall, and so how that would impact them being able to interview. But it sounds like if the agency is willing to do a phone or a Zoom, or if the student's able to travel to that location to meet in person,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that should be doable, but they just need to make sure that they're communicating those things with their field faculty.
Yeah, because we really need to be hitting the ground running. Like once you hand in your field application and you put a location down, that like we're hitting the ground running, trying to find somebody that is graciously willing to interview and host you as an intern, right? So
would you want them to indicate that, like, so in the case of Samantha, who knows she's moving,
mm-hmm.
she's going to put on her information form where she's headed, right? Where she's going to be moving to. Would you want her to also indicate on there, like, the date that she intends to be in that location, like when her move date is, so that the field faculty know right away that she's in transition? Or would you rather that be a conversation?
No, I think that's good. On the placement process information form, you know, there's a section that says, is there anything else you need us to know? There's also an opportunity to do that on the field application. So I would indicate that in both places, to be able to say, I indicated the location that I'm going to be in. So let's say I'm in, you know, I'm here in Florida, but in May, I'm going to be in North Carolina. You would want to put the North Carolina location that you're moving, you know, and then that way we're hitting the ground running, we're finding, but you would also want to indicate in there, I am in transition, I will be in that location by May, you know, or whatever, just so that then we know that, you know what I'm saying? Because sometimes we have situations where a student says they're moving and they put that on the field placement application, and we look for a placement and we find one in North Carolina. And we say, hey, here's your agency. And the student says, oh, yeah, but I'm not moving anymore, though. And so then that student, unfortunately, would need to sit out, because now we're too far along in the process to go back and to square one to find an internship in the location, right? So we just want to make sure that, yes, that should be indicated. North Carolina, here's the area I'm going to be in. And then also, in additional considerations, I'm not there yet, but I'm going to be there in May, right? And we only have control over so much, right? So if there's a situation where the agency is like, oh yeah, that's great, we'd love a student here in North Carolina, but the student has to be here 2 weeks ahead of time before they're planning to be here to go on, to do some type of training or something that's not flexible on the agency's end. We have to try our best to work around that. And we will do our due diligence to try to work around those situations, but sometimes it's just not possible. Sometimes there's just not any other options that are in that area that are able to take a student on a quick turnaround. So it's just, we just have to keep in mind that there's only so much that we have control over on our end, but
Yeah. Thank you for that, Christine. One final question. A student is asking, if a student is declined during an interview for their placement, how does this affect him or her? Are they penalized? And if so, how?
So no one's going to be declined from their interview, right? That's the goal. That's the big goal. Again, it depends on why, right? So if it was because of some professionalism issue, or if it was because, mostly it's going to be because of a professionalism issue, right? So if that's the case, it's not really that the student is penalized. It's just that there is no time, to find a different opportunity. So if the student is declined, we have a conversation, figure out why, do some coaching on that, and then we do our due diligence again to try to find another opportunity to be interviewed. But because we only have control over so much, we don't have control over what agencies are taking students or if they have openings, or sometimes there isn't another opportunity in time for the semester to start. So it can be very tricky, because if a student is declined, just say the student was able to get an interview in June, right? And they were declined, and we had a conversation, and then we said, okay, we're going to do our due diligence and try to find another opportunity. Well, that is a pretty good amount of time, from June to end of August, right? And so if we can find another opportunity, then great. And if we find it and the student is declined again, or there's not another opportunity found, that would be an example of why the student would need to sit out, because there's no other opportunity. Now, we do have a policy where if a student is either declined, if the student is not accepted based on professionalism issues, or inflexibility in their work schedule, if that happens 2 times, then definitely that's it. Like, the student has to sit out, and then we have to try again the next semester for the placement. So I hope that's helpful. It's hard to give like a straight answer, because there's so many, but I would say that if it's because of an issue, a barrier that the student has in terms of scheduling or professionalism, then again, we're going to do our due diligence, try to find another opportunity. If that were to happen twice, which is very rare, because our students are outstanding, and we don't usually have that issue where a student would be not accepted on 2 different interviews. But the worst case scenario would be, yes, the student would sit out, and then we would try again the next semester.
I think it's kind of a rare thing, actually, for students to be declined. So, but I think, your answer, it's hard to give a specific, because it really depends on the situation. But I think it really, sort of drives home the point that having that open communication with your field faculty is so important. So thank you for that. Adriana, do you want to just review everybody's next steps so they know what to be looking for next?
Sure. So we're going to send you a copy of the presentation. We're going to make sure that the recording is posted so that you're able to go back and listen if you missed anything, or you just would love to see us again. Review the presentation, create your to-do list, things that you need to work on, talking to your employer, checking out your car, make sure it's ready to go. You want to definitely check your night's email frequently. Ms. Ferretti said that she's going to open the course the first week of March. So be ready to get your invitation to join that web course and get your application in as soon as possible. And get support. Let your family and your support system know what's going on, what you're about to do in the coming semesters. And then check out some cool links here at the Field Anxiety website. This is a neat place where you can say, what are you nervous about? And you can click on it and you can get some feedback about that and what you can do to sort of alleviate that anxiety. And if you have any other questions, feel free to forward them over to Renee and I. And if we can't answer them, we will definitely send them over to the field team and we'll be sure that you get a response. But a lot of questions that you'll encounter will be answered in that web course that you'll see soon. So you might just want to hang tight for a week and see what comes up when you open that web course. And I will be reaching out to you in March as well about registering, not for the fall, but for the spring, or sorry, not for the fall, but for summer. So look out for something from me also.
Thank you so much to everyone. I'm sorry about running over a little on time, but hopefully you found this really helpful. And we look forward to continuing to work with you in the coming weeks as you get ready for placement. Have a good day, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.